Go Jump in the Pool, a Bruno and Boots story by Gordon Korman. Chapter 3, Everything Must Go. So it happened that when Mr. Sturgeon and his wife were driving home from a shopping expedition on Saturday afternoon, they saw a sign which read, "Giant Rummage Sale, McDonald Hall, 3 miles." The headmaster jammed on the brakes so suddenly that only the seatbelt saved them from going through the windshield. "William, what on earth?" exclaimed Mrs. Sturgeon. "I have no idea," her husband said coldly. "I can only hope there is another McDonald Hall." "Oh, that," said Mrs. Sturgeon with a little laugh. "You mean you knew?" "Well, yes," she replied. "The boys came to me for Rummage. I can't see any harm in their having a rummage sale to raise money for the swimming pool." "Why didn't they come to me and ask for permission?" the headmaster demanded angrily. "Don't be silly, dear," she replied airily. "You know perfectly well you'd have said no. Those boys aren't stupid." Mr. Sturgeon stomped out of the car, pulled up the sign, and tossed it into the trunk. "That's the end of that," he declared firmly. His wife just smiled. A little further along, she noticed another of Chris Talbot's signs coming up on the right. "That little light on the dashboard," she said hastily. "The one that says oil? It's been flickering. Perhaps you'd better keep an eye on it." With one anxious eye on the dashboard and the other watching the road, Mr. Sturgeon failed to see the sign. It read, "Don't miss it! McDonald Hall Rummage Sale, 1 mile." Behind the cash box, Bruno Walton took in money and surveyed the campus with great satisfaction. Cars were parked on both sides of the long driveway and along the soft shoulder of the highway, and the sales tables were crowded with people. Bruno had a right to be pleased. His rummage sale had attracted not only the staff and students from both McDonald Hall and Miss Scrimmage's, but also a good deal of passing trade. There were older people who had been out for a leisurely drive, young people with small children, and many of the local families from neighboring farms and villages. Bruno was doubly happy, for safe and warm in his pocket was his lucky penny, a bargain buy at only 35 cents. Because there were so many small children, Elmer Drimsdale's goldfish and ant colonies were the hit of the sale at $1 apiece. The enterprising Mark Davies had printed up sheets entitled, "The Care and Feeding of Your Goldfish," and "How to Care for Your Ant Colony." These were selling for an additional 10 cents and contained as much technical information as Mark knew. Mainly, don't take your fish out of water, and don't put your ants in water. No one had thought to put price tags on the merchandise, but Bruno had quickly made up for that by writing "Price Catalog" on a blank notebook and studiously pretending to look up each item as it was brought to the cash table. Bruno was very agreeable, though, and if a customer complained that the price was too high, he happily dropped it because, as he explained, everything must go. Kathy Burton hurried up to the cash table. "Well, we've sold all the jewelry," she announced happily. "We even sold the tablecloth." "Boots will be thrilled," replied Bruno. "That was the sheet off his bed." "How are we doing?" "We've got a fortune here," Bruno exclaimed. He pointed to the crowd. "Look, I can see somebody coming up with that hideous lamp you girls brought. We should have saved our breakfast garbage. People will buy anything." The crowd parted to make way for Miss Scrimmage, who was carrying a garishly painted hurricane lamp in her arms. "It seems a shame to make her pay for it," Kathy commented. "She already bought it once." Bruno's head whipped around. "You mean it's hers?" Kathy shrugged. "We liberated it from her sitting room." It was too late for Bruno to say anything else. Miss Scrimmage was upon him. "Dear boy, I cannot tell you how pleased I am at finding this marvelous antique," she gushed. "It's a perfect match for the one I already have. What are you asking for it, and wherever did you find it?" Bruno looked around desperately. Kathy had drifted off into the crowd. "Would $2 be too much?" he stammered. "Dear boy, you'll never make any money if you're not a better businessman. Here is $10, and I'm happy to pay it." She handed him 2 $5 bills. Boots came running up as Miss Scrimmage moved away. "The fish is here," he announced. "Those girls?" Bruno gasped, half in laughter, half in tears. "They swiped Miss Scrimmage's lamp, and she just gave me $10 for it. Now she thinks she's got a pair, and—" "Never mind that," groaned Boots. "They did the same thing with her shotgun. Wilbur opened up another cache on the other side, and some lady just gave him $35 for it." Bruno held his head and watched as Mr. Sturgeon's blue Plymouth inched its way up the crowded driveway. "William, calm down," said Mrs. Sturgeon soothingly. "I am calm," insisted the headmaster as he finally found a place to park. "I shall remain calm until I get my hands on the boys responsible for this flea market." "William," she argued, "you know they're only doing it for you and the school. I think you should be proud of them." Mr. Sturgeon said nothing. With his wife right behind him pointing out the virtues of the boys who worked so hard for all this, he plowed through the crowd toward the cash table where Bruno Walton was seated. Halfway there, he ran into James R. Snow, chairman of the board of directors of McDonald Hall. Mr. Snow was examining a framed paint-by-numbers painting of a rather cross-eyed dog when he caught sight of Mr. and Mrs. Sturgeon. "William! Good afternoon, Mildred," Mr. Snow greeted them. "Congratulations! You must be very proud of your boys for putting together this marvelous sale, and to raise money for the school. Such loyalty! Such school spirit!" The headmaster's jaw dropped, but he managed to rise to the occasion. "Oh, yes, Jim. Very proud indeed." "As a matter of fact," Mr. Snow continued, "I've managed to pick up some real bargains." He held up an old brass umbrella stand. "Look at this beautiful antique for only $3. Mr. Sturgeon feigned a smile. "Lovely, Jim. Just lovely. It seems that you are doing well." He turned to his wife. "Mildred, shall we browse?" Mrs. Sturgeon followed her husband through the crowd toward some of the display tables. When they were out of Mr. Snow's hearing, the headmaster addressed his wife. "Mildred, that umbrella holder was a wedding present from my great-aunt Agatha." "Yes, dear, I know that," she replied, "and I've always hated it. But did you hear what Jim Snow said about the sale? He's always so quick to understand the essential points, isn't he, dear?" Mr. Sturgeon did not reply, because he was busy watching Bruno close another deal with Miss Scrimmage. She was buying his favorite old chair, the one he used in his basement retreat. He glared at his wife. His mouth opened and closed several times, but no sound came out. Mrs. Sturgeon just continued smiling. Having managed to lose his wife in the crowd, at last Mr. Sturgeon came face to face with Bruno Walton. "I trust business is going well," he said, not without some sarcasm. "Hello, sir!" Bruno greeted him heartily. "I'm glad you could make it. We're really doing great. We'll have enough money for a pool in no time." "May I ask what your business hours are?" Mr. Sturgeon consulted his watch. "It's only an hour until dinner. When does the sale end?" "When we've sold everything, of course," Bruno replied cheerfully. "Everything must go. That's our motto." "Well, Walton, you have 15 minutes in which to reach that goal. After that, I want everything and everybody off this lawn. The sale is over." "Yes, sir," said Bruno, much subdued. "Also," the headmaster went on, "I would like to see you and O'Neill in my office this evening at 7:30. Please be punctual." And Mr. Sturgeon walked off into the crowd in search of his wife. Bruno stood up on the sales table and cupped his hands to his mouth. 15 minutes! He roared. 15 more minutes of fabulous bargains! 15 minutes to closing! Across the way, he heard the foghorn voice of Wilbur Hackenschleimer taking up the cry. In a little while, the campus was cleared. $713.15, Bruno Walton reported to the fundraising committee at dinner that evening. He indicated 4 large buckets on the floor under the table. "It's all in there. Boots and I just finished counting it." "The amount in our possession," announced Elmer Grimsdale, "is 2.8526% of the required amount for the swimming pool, leaving $24,286.85 still to be collected." The boys were stunned into momentary silence. For a split second, even Wilbur paused in his systematic eating. "I guess it's a whole lot of money," Mark Davies commented, "but I sure expected more." The boys all murmured their agreement. Bruno nodded sadly. "I thought we'd make thousands," he agreed. "But anyway, it's a start, and at least Boots and I will have something to give the fish when we go to his office tonight." Boots choked on his milk. "The fish? His office? Tonight?" "Didn't I mention it?" Bruno asked innocently. "The fish wants to see us tonight at 7:30. "Well, I don't want to see him," Boots moaned. "We're in trouble again." "Not to worry," Bruno promised. "We'll dazzle him with our flawless logic and our buckets full of money." "I know about the money," said Boots, "but would you let me in on the logic?" "Certainly," Bruno replied. "Logic dictates that if anything threatens the sanctity of McDonald Hall, the threat must be eliminated. Besides, the fish wants a pool, too. He said so." "And he'll be thrilled with our $713, Boots said sarcastically. "And 15 cents, Bruno added. "Yes, he will, because there's plenty more where that came from." Chris Talbot got up and left the table. "I think I may be sick," he said. Bruno looked at his watch. "It's 7:15. Let's go." Grabbing 2 buckets each, he and Boots headed toward the faculty building. Mrs. Davis was out, but the office door was opened, allowing Mr. Sturgeon to watch their arrival. Come in," he said impatiently, ushering them in and seating them on the hard wooden bench they had occupied so many times before. His eyes fell on the 4 money buckets, and a smile tugged at the corner of his thin mouth, but his expression remained severe. Bruno spoke up bravely. "We brought you $713.15, sir, the entire proceeds of the sale." Mr. Sturgeon reached into one of the buckets and removed a $10 bill. $703.15, he amended. "This is a refund for one of your customers. I had a telephone call a few moments ago from Miss Scrimmage." "Oh," said Bruno. "You must mean the lamp." "I do indeed," said the headmaster sternly. "Did you take it?" Bruno hesitated. He didn't want to cause trouble for Kathy and Diane. I guess we did, sir." "Indirectly," Boots added. Mr. Sturgeon seemed to understand. "Well, then after the $10 is refunded, we can safely leave the problem to Miss Scrimmage. Now we come to our problem, or should I say, your problem?" The boys remained silent. "I am still headmaster of this institution," he went on. "When there are examinations, I know about them. When there are misdemeanors, I attend to them. When the grass is cut, I am consulted. You boys have been at McDonald Hall long enough to know that nothing, absolutely nothing, is allowed to take place on this campus without my permission. What do you have to say for yourselves?" "We thought it would be a happy surprise for you, sir," said Bruno meekly, "when you found out we were raising money for the pool." Mr. Sturgeon nodded. "I realize you meant well," he said, a little less severely, "and that is why I'm not going to punish you, but I would like to point out that a great deal of the harm in this world is caused by people with good intentions. There will be no more flea markets." Does that mean no more fundraising, sir?" Bruno asked anxiously. "We're saving for the pool, and we're a little bit short." Mr. Sturgeon coughed and tried to look grim, but he seemed to hear Mr. Snow's voice. "What school spirit!" and Mildred's, "Oh, William, what harm can it do?" He could not find it in his heart to discourage them. "You may proceed if you don't get carried away," he said finally. "Yes, sir!" Bruno exclaimed happily. "And thank you, sir," Boots added. "Meanwhile," Mr. Sturgeon went on, "I'll keep this money in the office safe for you. I don't like the idea of keeping it in pails in the dormitories. At the earliest opportunity, I shall take you boys to the bank to help you open an account for your pool fund. You are dismissed. Good evening." Bruno and Boots politely smiled their way out of the office. As they left the faculty building, they met Boots' former roommate, George Wexford Smythe III, who was nobody's friend and preferred it that way. He was taking his evening constitutional to clear his sinuses. "Ah," George sneered unpleasantly. "I should have known you two were responsible for that vulgar fish market that took place on campus today. I hope you were properly chastised." "Watch it, George," Bruno smiled sweetly. "Your blood pressure—" "Goodbye, George," Boots announced firmly. They walked away and left him. Bruno smiled happily. "Let's go home," he said with satisfaction. "You're going to write a letter to your folks telling them all about our new pool." Mr. Sturgeon hung up his toothbrush, turned off the bathroom light, and walked into the darkened bedroom. "Who put that chair there? Mildred, where's my nightlight?" "Some passing tourist from California bought it," she said mildly. "And I found that chair at the Rummage sale. It was a real buy at $8. "It probably belonged to the Barracuda from across the road," Mr. Sturgeon muttered. "Now, dear, that's no way to talk about Miss Scrimmage." He inched his way across the room until his hand touched his night table. There was a large metal box sitting exactly where he always placed his glasses. He picked the box up to move it. There was a sudden snap. Something soft and springy struck him in the face, and a recorded voice said, "Hi there, my name is Jack." Mr. Sturgeon made no sound. He sat on the edge of his bed until the pounding of his heart returned to normal. "I bought the Jack in the Box at the sale, too," his wife exclaimed. "I thought it was cute." "Oh, it is cute," he replied calmly. "Very cute." They were about to settle down to sleep when they heard the police sirens.